Waterman Mountain Cave. On February 2, 2005, Tom Gilland, Pete Fine, and Bruce Lynn drove 90 minutes from Tucson to explore Waterman Mountain Bat Cave in Arizona. While Fine and Lynn readied their equipment, Gilland decided to hike up ahead. The approach gained 200 feet of elevation over sharp limestone with cacti dotting the slope. Gilland reached the cave entrance and stepped inside. He moved deeper and encountered a small rock pile 3 to 4 feet high. He grabbed one of the loose rocks and pulled it away to clear the passage. Behind the rocks was a massive hive of Africanized honeybees. Thousands of bees erupted in a dark, buzzing cloud. Within seconds, dozens of stings hit his face, neck, and arms. Gilland scrambled backward and ran for the entrance with the swarm pursuing relentlessly. After about 50 yards, he reached a ledge that required controlled climbing. Still being attacked and stung, he attempted to run down the technical descent. His foot slipped on the sharp limestone and he tumbled out of control. The razor-sharp rocks tore into him as he careened down. His left knee took a devastating impact with a deep gash. His hands and arms were shredded across the abrasive surface. His right ring finger was dislocated, sticking out at a 90-degree angle. Despite the pain, Gilland gripped the finger and pulled it back into proper position. The bees found him again and delivered more stings. He forced himself to his feet and ran another 50 yards despite his injured knee. He encountered Fine and Lynn coming up the hill. All three immediately turned and headed down toward their vehicle. Lynn, a professional firefighter, examined Gilland's gashed knee at the car. He rinsed the wound and wrapped a clean sock around it to control the bleeding. Lynn drove approximately 1 hour to the nearest emergency room. Gilland had multiple bee stings, a severely lacerated knee, broken thumb, 2 broken fingers, and numerous abrasions. Later, Gilland learned the cave was known to contain killer bees. Due to a cave secrecy ethic, this critical safety information had never been shared with the broader caving community. The secrecy that protected the cave from vandalism nearly killed him. Jean-Luc's 34 days ordeal. On the 18th of December 2004, Jean-Luc Josiad Verre left his home in Mat-Coulon, southwestern France. He was 48 years old and a caretaker at a local health center. Depression had been his constant companion for months. He climbed into his Land Rover with a bottle of whiskey and sleeping pills in his jacket. He drove to an abandoned mushroom farm built into underground caves in the limestone hills. He clicked on his flashlight and walked into the underground caverns, leaving his car door open. The abandoned farm was a sprawling labyrinth, stretching approximately 8 kilometers beneath the hills. Jean-Luc walked deeper with no particular destination, turning left, then right. Within minutes, he was completely lost in the identical-looking tunnels. Within hours, his flashlight batteries died, plunging him into absolute darkness. He continued forward with hands outstretched, feeling along the cold, damp walls. The ground became muddy and thick, pulling both his shoes completely off his feet. Now barefoot, he stumbled through the darkness at a constant 12 degrees Celsius temperature. Each corridor led to another, indistinguishable in the darkness. By the third day, hunger and thirst became his primary concerns. He positioned himself beneath dripping water from the ceiling and pressed his mouth against walls to suck moisture. After nearly a week, he began eating clay from the tunnel floor and gnawing on rotten wood. He found old plastic tarpaulins and wrapped himself in them for warmth. Without day and night rhythms, his sleep patterns became erratic. At one point, he fashioned a rope into a noose as a last resort. Yet he also experienced unexpected moments of profound calm and meditative states. By the 4th week, his 75-kilogram body had lost nearly a third of its weight. His fingernails grew long and broken. His beard grew several inches and his bare feet hardened into calloused pads. On the 21st of January 2005, exactly 34 days later, 3 teenage boys discovered his Land Rover with the door still open. They contacted police who dispatched a search team. After 90 minutes of searching, they found Jean-Luc just 180 meters from the entrance. He was ghost pale, skeletal, and had a long, wild beard, but was alive. He was rushed to the hospital where doctors were astonished he had no life-threatening injuries. Cueva del Agua cave tragedy. In January 2025, Lorena Garcia Martin prepared to dive Cueva del Agua in Isla Plana, Spain. She was 37 years old from Murcia. Cueva del Agua was not a friendly cave with flooded tunnels stretching into total blackness. Visibility dropped to zero without warning and passages shrank to barely shoulder width. Lorena was not a cave diver, but a recreational diver with no training for overhead environments. By every rule and protocol, she should never have entered Cueva del Agua. That morning, she arrived with a small informal group. The dive was not part of a certified cave course. She entered wearing standard recreational equipment with no redundant air supply or cave-rigged setup. She followed the others inside through the calm water. For the first several minutes, the tunnel seemed cathedral-like and manageable, but deeper inside, the walls narrowed and silt rose in clouds. The group continued past where recreational divers should stop. A diver kicked the floor too hard, disturbing the silt. Instantly, the water turned to gray fog, and visibility vanished. Someone signaled to slow down, but another diver didn't see it. In that moment, Lorena became separated from the group. She wasn't cave certified, wasn't trained in zero visibility, and didn't know the route. Inside the cave with no reference points and no backup air, her chances were zero. When the other divers made it out, they realized Lorena wasn't behind them. Someone called emergency services immediately. The Guardia Civil GEA unit arrived and recognized this was a recovery, not a rescue. Expert divers entered with specialized cave gear and found her deep inside a narrow section. Lorena had drowned alone in the cold black water. Spanish media reported the story, and forums exploded with questions about why she was inside that cave at all. The Guardia Civil opened a formal investigation into possible negligence. Witness statements contradicted each other about whether she understood the danger. Spanish cave divers demanded access control and permit-only entry to Cueva del Agua, Lick Creek Cave Nightmare. On 14th August 2001, Jennifer Rochlow and 4 teenagers headed to Lick Creek Cave in Montana. Jennifer was 19 years old, looking forward to her sophomore year of college. She went with her younger sister Vanessa, 17, and friends Chris Castle, 19, Andrew, 17, and Derek Lute, 17. They had planned the trip for weeks as one last adventure before school began. They packed flashlights, water, snacks, and a knotted rope from Chris's garage. None had proper helmets, climbing harnesses, or specialized caving equipment. Jennifer wore jeans and a gray cotton sweatshirt her boyfriend had given her. At 10:30 a.m., they parked and hiked to the cave entrance. Derek had medical training from his first summer with the National Guard. They moved 90 meters into the cave and reached the drop, a 4.5-meter descent. Chris secured the rope around a limestone projection and descended first. Jennifer volunteered to go second and began lowering herself over the edge. Halfway down, her loose-fitting sweatshirt caught on one of the knots. She hung suspended, trying to free the fabric with one hand. Her body began spinning slowly as she twisted, revolving in complete circles. After nearly 30 seconds of desperately clinging, her fingers slipped from the rough rope. She fell 3 meters face down, her left shoulder violently striking a protruding rock. The impact spun her body and she landed hard on her back on jagged rocks below. Chris was at her side in seconds as she gasped for breath with excruciating pain. The others scrambled down through an alternate route. Derek assessed her condition and found she could move her fingers and toes. The group decided to carry Jennifer out themselves rather than wait for professional help. Chris carried her on his back, crawling toward the entrance. After nearly 2 hours, they emerged into daylight and loaded her into their Jeep. They drove 80 kilometers to the hospital in Great Falls. X-rays confirmed 5 fractured vertebrae and a severely fractured pelvis. Jennifer spent 8 days in the hospital, followed by 3 months of intensive physical therapy. Tank Cave Tragedy. On the 30th of November 2025, Gary Gibson prepared to dive Tank Cave in South Australia. He was 65 years old and a veteran Victorian cave diver. Tank Cave was one of the most dangerous underwater mazes on Earth, with 7 kilometers of submerged tunnels. Gary wasn't reckless but calm, competent, and methodical. He had dived Tank Cave before and knew its rules. That morning, 2 close diving partners joined him. They spent the previous evening discussing the dive plan and a rendezvous point procedure. Just after 9 a.m., they suited up and descended into the darkness. Around 10 a.m., they reached a restriction that only 1 diver at a time could attempt. The first 2 divers squeezed through successfully. Gary approached and exhaled to reduce his profile but felt resistance. His chest brushed limestone and his tank scraped. He tried again more carefully but felt the rock closing in. Gary made the decision to turn back rather than risk getting stuck. The team acknowledged and Gary would meet them at the rendezvous point 150 meters behind. He began retreating through the tunnel system alone with his torch beam lighting the way. Somewhere on his way back, something changed. The world around him likely clouded into a silt out. The limestone walls vanished into gray haze. Back at the restriction, his 2 partners completed their turnaround and headed to the rendezvous point. When they arrived, Gary wasn't there. They swam back and saw a faint glow in the murky distance. When they reached the light, Gary was floating motionless, unmoving, not breathing. They couldn't revive him and had no choice but to surface and call for help. By Monday morning, 10 expert divers, including Dr. Richard Harris, arrived. The recovery mission took 3 separate dives through freezing water and zero visibility tunnels. Around 3:30 p.m. Monday, Gary's body was brought to the surface after 24 hours of effort. Police confirmed there was no entanglement, equipment failure, or rock collapse. Gary simply didn't make it back. The Organ Cave. On 4th October 1982, 8 teenagers stood at the Lips entrance of Organ Cave in West Virginia. Organ Cave stretched over 45 miles through limestone beneath Greenbrier County. The group entered on Sunday afternoon, planning to explore Hell's Fissure, then return. After exploring, they turned back and wandered into an area known as the Maze. Deep in the maze, their flashlights began to fail one by one. Batteries died, died and bulbs went dark. Out of 8 people, only 2 flashlights still functioned with no backup lights. The 2 with working flashlights decided to find help while the other 6 stayed put. The pair navigated through the cave system and settled near a cave register in the Hanley room to wait. Back in the maze, the remaining 6 kept 1 cigarette lighter working for minimal light. The cave temperature remained in the low to mid-50s degrees Fahrenheit, becoming dangerously cold. One member was diabetic and his blood sugar levels began to drop without food. He grew increasingly woozy as hours passed. Time lost all meaning in absolute darkness. Sunday evening, family members realized the teenagers hadn't emerged and summoned help. Jerry Kyle and 2 volunteers entered the cave to search. They reached the maze and found the 6 huddled together in the passage. The diabetic member was woozy but able to walk with assistance. All 6 were hypothermic but mobile after hours in the cold. Once the 6 were safely out, additional volunteers assembled to find the remaining 2. 4 rescuers searched from the lips area while 4 entered through the commercial entrance. The second team found the 2 teenagers in the Hanley room area. They had spent the entire night underground suffering from severe hypothermia. In desperation, they had burned the cave register for brief moments of heat and light. They emerged around 10 a.m. Monday morning, approximately 24 hours after entering. All 8 survived, but were traumatized by the experience.